Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Joe, and I'm the dad.
And I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
Hey, I went to the bookstore today.
Yeah?
They have a section there. All books in this section, 1/3 off.
Good deal.
I thought it was a really good deal.
Did you get anything?
Yeah, I got The Lion, the Witch. Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if anything but death separates you from me.
So you may have heard that vow cited at a wedding. I think it is one of the vows that I believe that we said when I was married.
Oh.
And it comes up pretty frequently at many weddings.
Yes, it does. It's quite popular.
But do you know where it comes from? It might surprise you. You would think that it maybe comes from a famous wedding in the Bible, or it comes from maybe Paul in the New Testament is talking about, here's what marriage should be like, or Jesus talking about marriage. But it might surprise you to hear that it comes from the biblical book of Ruth.
In the Old Testament.
And it was spoken between two women.
Right.
The Bible's famous marriage vow is quietly queer. I don't mean that it's gay, but it is queer in the sense that those of us in the LGBTQ plus community are queer, and in what queer has come to mean. But not only is it queer, it's quietly queer. It's not yelling at you. It's not in your face. It's not trying to make a big deal out of things. It's just present. And that's really what we feel like LGBTQ plus people, what our place is in the Bible, that the Bible is not yelling at us saying, I support you. You are validated. But it is there all through the text. If you are there, if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, to use another part of the Bible. How is it queer, you might ask?
Wow, how is it queer, I might ask?
Yes, you might. Well, so there's actually a lot of things that are going on. And maybe the best way is to talk through the story first, and then we'll draw out how this is actually a queer story.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Now, the book of Ruth, you're going to find it in a Bible. It's in both the Hebrew Bible as well as in a Christian Bible. So the Jewish Bible and the Christian Bible. And among scholars, oftentimes they will call what Christians call the Old Testament, they'll call that the Hebrew Bible because it's the same grouping of books, although there's actually a different order in the Jewish Bible versus in the Christian Bible.
But it's there.
Right. Now, in the Christian Bible, you will find it as the 8th book in the Bible. You got the 5 books of Moses, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And then I always remember those next 3 books because I just remember what a jerk that Joshua is because Joshua judges Ruth. And so it's the 8th book of the Bible. It's only 4 chapters long. You can read through this thing in about 15 minutes or so. It's a very quick read. And in fact, if your Bible has been sitting on the shelf for a while and you're thinking that those edges on there are to hold the dust on it so that it doesn't fall off, this episode might be a good time to just go over, pull that thing down, take 15 minutes and read through it. You could even put this on pause and then come back and we're going to talk about what happens.
The first chapter of this book talks about Ruth and Naomi and how they managed to get together. First of all, Naomi was married. She had 2 sons. The 2 sons married women who were from Moab. They were Moabites.
Right. Now, there's a reason why they were there. Because there was a famine in the land.
Right.
Originally, they were from Bethlehem, which that word actually means, it comes from Beth, which means house, and Lehem, or lechem, probably as they would say in Hebrew, means bread. It was supposed to be the house of bread,
Oh,
but they weren't finding bread in their location. So they had to travel to a foreign land, to the land of Moab, where the Israelites did not think too fondly of their neighboring country.
but during that time period, the Israelites and the Moabs got along. There was peace between them.
Moabites.
Yes.
Yes. Right.
So
they
there was a
were
pleasure.
considered kin. They kind of looked at one another as distant relatives, but distant relatives that they were kind of outsiders.
That's true.
And so while they're there in this foreign land, three bad events happen. First is with Naomi's husband.
Yep. Poor guy died.
And then with the two sons,
Yes,
they both died as well.
exactly.
And so now it's just the three women together.
Correct. It's Naomi and her two daughter-in-laws.
Right. And those would be Ruth and Orpah.
Yeah, and so Orpah says, okay, well, things aren't working out here. I'm going back to the old man.
Right. And Naomi says to Ruth, same thing with you. There's nothing for you here with me any longer.
Yeah.
Go ahead. It reminds me of when C-3PO says in Star Wars, in the movie Star Wars, he gets hurt and he says, oh, there's nothing here for me anymore. Just leave me here. I'm done. They're out in the desert. And Luke says, what are you talking about? Come along with me. Yeah. Although in this case, it's the other way around. So Naomi is saying, there's nothing left for you here with me at all.
Yes, she encourages Ruth to leave.
Go back to your family where at least they can take care of you, and I'm going to figure out my own way. Now, of course, they're living in a very patriarchal society where women don't have a whole lot of options to take care of themselves. There is no Social Security. There's no Medicaid. There's no social program to help people out.
Wow, there's no Medicaid?
No. And so Naomi figures Ruth is going to go back. And that is the point where Ruth says this famous verse.
Yes, the one we read in the very beginning here.
Do not press me to leave you or to turn back from following you. And that's where she says, where you go, I will go.
Yes.
Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people. It is a statement of faithfulness.
And even more critically, your God will be my God, which is the part that connects this whole thing to the rest of the Bible.
And so then in chapter 2, they go back to Bethlehem because now the famine is done, but now it's just the two of them. And they have to figure out where are they going to eat. And there's a tradition, it's actually enshrined right into the first 5 books of the Bible, that if somebody is really poor, you can go out to a field and you can gather from the edges of the field. So it was expected. In fact, there was a law that was written right in there in the laws of Moses saying, you shall not harvest to the edge of your field. You got to leave something there for the poor people among you so that they can come and have something to eat. So that's what Ruth is doing here. She's coming to glean. And actually, in this case, so it's the harvest time. Now, it happened right about this time of the year.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, because that actually also occurs with many of the indigenous people in America.
Yeah, and I think we see that in a lot of different cultures.
Of course.
Because it's important to look out for those that are less privileged.
Mm-hmm.
And that is enshrined right there. So she goes out and she says, I'm going to go glean behind the reapers. And so basically whatever the stalks of barley are that they drop, I'm going to go and try to grab some of those. And hopefully by the end of the day, I'm going to get enough that we can make a meal out of it.
Barley soup.
And so the owner of the field is named Boaz. And he sees this woman back behind and he says, who's this woman? And they say, she's the one that came back with Naomi. She's not originally from here, but she came back because she did this out of faithfulness so that she could help her mother-in-law.
See, a lot of people know about that because Bethlehem is a small town. And because it's a small town, when they came back, they were the talk of the town.
They were, yeah, absolutely. And so then Boaz is an upright man. He's a good and a just man. And he says, make sure, not that you just drop one or two here or there, make sure that you drop enough that she can get a good good gleaning from what she's doing there.
Yes.
And she comes back with basically a bushel basket that is 2/3 full, more than you could ever expect to get just from going out picking up one stalk here and there.
That's a lot of barley soup.
Yes, it sure is. And they are amazed at how faithful Boaz has been to them. So that brings us to chapter 3. And Naomi says now to Ruth, hey, okay, we got an in here. Let's get you married to this guy because it turns out that he is one of our kin. Now, the way that it worked in biblical culture was it was expected, and this is very strange to us in our time. It's a very strange practice, but you see this in a variety of cultures throughout the world, is that when it was expected that the family line would go on, and that was a big part of their Social Security in a sense, was you didn't get a paycheck from the government. You had children, and your children were your Social Security.
Right.
And so then the idea was, and then if there was an inheritance, it would go on to them, so you would preserve the family name. So what that meant is that if somebody died and they had a brother, it would fall to the brother to go ahead and marry the wife that got left behind, to marry the widow. And then they together would produce children that would then become the offspring not of the brother, but they would be considered the offspring of the man that had originally died. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of an offshoot of that, is that Boaz here, because he is kindred, he is considered somebody that can stand in place for Ruth's original husband. And so Naomi says, hey, here's the deal. When he's sleeping at night, go over there and sneak into his tent and lay down next to him. And there's some euphemistic language here where they're basically saying, she's saying, go in there and see if you can seduce him, and then you'll become his wife. And Boaz wakes up and he says, wait a minute here, what's going on?
Exactly.
He's a little bit surprised there. And he says, all right, hold on. We can't do this. We're going to do this biblically.
Exactly.
And so that brings us to chapter 4. He says, not right now, but let's do this the right way. So he gets together with the town elders. They all go together, and the tradition was already old by the time this book was written, because they have to say, and there was a tradition in those days that all the legal matters were done by the gate of the city. So Boaz goes out to the gate of the city, and there's another relative that's actually a closer relative. And he goes out to this closer relative and he says, hey, Naomi has come back here. Did you know she has a parcel of land and she's looking to sell that parcel of land? Do you want to buy it? And the close relative says, well, sure, I want to buy it. Absolutely. And Boaz says, okay, well, it comes with an extra little price tag. You got to marry Ruth then, so that you can produce offspring for her dead son, for Naomi's dead son. And this guy says, whoa, no, I don't want that. You go ahead. You're next in line. You go ahead. You get that field and you marry Ruth.
Which is what he wanted anyway.
It is. And so he knew that this was going to happen.
Exactly.
It is, the story makes very clear. So they get married and everybody lives happily ever after. And then we get to the punchline of the whole book here. Comes in chapter 4, verses 18 through 21. Now, these are the descendants of Perez. Perez became the father of Hezron, Hezron of Ram, Ram of Amminadab, Amminadab of Nahshon. And you're thinking, what are all these names? Nahshon of Salmon, Salmon of Boaz. Hey, I know that name. He was the guy from the story.
Yeah, right.
Boaz of Obed. Oh, okay. Well, I guess that was their son that they had. Okay, great. They had Obed. Obed was the father of Jesse. Oh, I don't know who Jesse is, but interesting. Jesse was the father of David. And that's the very last verse in the book. The punchline is that why this story all mattered is because this is part of the genealogy of one of the most important figures of the entire Hebrew Bible. And that's what makes it queer. Now, we think to ourselves that queer must mean that it's a woman and a man with a man. And in this case, I mean, there definitely is. I mean, there's a level of commitment here that Ruth had towards Naomi that was so strong. But there's
Exactly.
a lot more that goes beyond that. So, for instance, she's a Moabite. She's an outsider. She is not considered part of the people of God. And oh, how often do we have that where we in the LGBTQ plus community are considered outsiders? And many churches, especially conservative churches, where we've had our whole community, our whole extended family, all of the people that we know and love. And when we come out, they say, you're an outsider. You don't belong here. That's exactly what was happening in Israelite society is Moabites or Ammonites or these people from these surrounding societies, they would look down their noses and say, you don't belong here. You're not like us. You're not part of this. And this story here says, you think so. You think that way, don't you? But you like King David, don't you? Oh, sure, we love King David. Did you know that King David's great-grandmother was actually an outsider? It's a big, big deal. This is not, it's hard for us to grasp how devastating this would have been, how much of a punchline this would have actually been to the initial people that were listening. But then Ruth's vow is in a queer form. She says, where you go, I will go. That's covenant language. That's saying I'm making a commitment. In the ancient world, that level of a binding commitment between two women with no man mediating it, that is unusual. That is out of the ordinary. It is not the expected shape of female relationships in that culture. So it's not romantic. I don't want to try to push it that way, but it is very queer.
Yes.
And then this is about chosen family. And boy, those of us in the LGBTQ plus community, we understand this because we are so often rejected by the very people that we're supposed to be supporting us. And so we understand what it is to go out and to find the people that actually love us, that actually support us.
Just reflecting back on that, it is Naomi who says, go away. And it's Ruth who says, no, I am here for you. And I will be here for you through death. That's really powerful. So what does that mean for us in the LGBTQ plus community or as an ally? We'll tell you right after this.
Hi, I'm Andy Barrett, a Lutheran pastor and a supporter of this podcast. I see Transcendent as a ministry. I've pointed many people toward these recorded conversations full of so much heart and care and warmth, as well as some of Joe's jokes, which are hands down the worst part of this podcast. But even they make me smile. I'm one of the many genuinely blessed by Transcendent, and I encourage you to join me in supporting this podcast by giving as little as $3 a month. Go to transcendent.com and click support.
When I was in seminary, by the time we learned our Hebrew, they wanted to take us through an actual part of the Bible. And so Ruth was actually the book that they took us through. Now, I wish that I could say that I can go back and still read this in the Hebrew right now. I can't, but what I can say is I did read it through in the original Hebrew at one time in my life. And so I do know a fair bit about this, but it's also been 10 years or longer since I've done that, 12 years maybe since I've done that. But it's interesting to me the place that the book of Ruth has in the overall story of the Bible. Now, in Jewish culture and in the Jewish tradition, you've got this is a part of the festival of Shavuot, which is the festival of weeks. So 7 weeks after the Passover, they celebrated a festival of harvest, which again, keep in mind that the climate is different. So they're planting way back much earlier, and then their harvest is coming when we think of the time as just past planting. But of course, our climates are different. So they're harvesting much earlier in the year, what we would think of as the end of spring coming into summer. But so this lines up with the feast that celebrated the giving of the law, the giving of the Torah, that Moses, remember, came down from the mountain and said, here are the 10 commandments. And really the entire first 5 books of the Bible are treated very, very highly, more than the rest of the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible, the Jewish Bible.
They call it the Pentateuch.
The Pentateuch, right, which means the 5 books.
Yep.
In Greek, I think, yes, Greek. And then Ruth became associated with that because here it is a book that's about harvest, but it's not just about harvest, it's about faithfulness. There's an important word that's used in Hebrew, and this is the one thing that I really remember from this. The word that's used is hesed. And it's the word that we use when we talk about love your neighbor as yourself. That's hesed. Love the Lord your God is hesed. And it's more than just love. It's not just lovey-dovey feelings. It is the sense of loyalty. It's the sense of commitment. It's the sense of kindness. Sometimes it will be translated as loving kindness. It's a big concept. And it means not just that I care about you, but I do care about you. But I'm caring about you to the point that I'm not going to leave you behind. Nobody gets left behind.
Kind of like saying, either I accept it or I lose you.
Yes, which is exactly what you said to me.
Yeah.
When I came out, you were demonstrating hesed towards me.
Absolutely.
Your queer child.
Yes.
Coming out. And that is exactly what we need. That's what this book is about. And then you see that going forward, then in the Christian tradition, you see the same theme being picked up, that they take the 7 weeks, 7 times 7 is 49, but they celebrated then the 50th day, and they called it Pentecost.
Mm-hmm.
Same celebration, and this one, again, was about the harvest, about bringing in the harvest, about it's time to go forth with this word of joyous news that we have in the new story of Jesus, to go forth and bring this message that God loves everyone and wants to save everyone. And so if you're in a place where, like Ruth and Naomi, you feel like things are not going well, the Pentecost is a time of hope and a time where you can finally have that harvest and that place of salvation. So you see all through the Bible these themes weaving in and out. And so this story of commitment is a really, really important one that stands in a place that's really central. It's not some far off theme. It's not at the edges of the Bible. Like, it doesn't really matter. We could kind of get rid of it. It wouldn't matter so much. It's really one of the central themes that you see running through the entirety of Scripture.
So how does that relate to the LGBTQ plus community? It's about chosen families. Ruth and Naomi in the chosen family. That is a really critical story for us, and it helps us to understand that so many of us are parts of chosen families as well. Many LGBTQ plus people are rejected or misunderstood by their biological family. And when that happens, what happens to them? They build chosen families for survival, but also for belonging. Ruth actually made that choice with Naomi. That is really critical with how God sees chosen families. If you're part of a chosen family, it doesn't mean that it's not family. It means it is family. Ruth models that chosen family is not second best. It's sacred.
Right. Ruth chose Naomi over her own blood. The Bible treats that choice not as just a consolation. This is a covenant. This is a sacred choice. So if you build family outside of biology, you're standing in this tradition, Ruth's tradition.
Ruth models the chosen family, and then she doesn't treat the chosen family as a backup plan. She treats it like a calling. Oh, this is my calling. This is what I will be doing. It's not, well, I guess this is going to carry me for the next few months or maybe the next 2 or 3 years. It is a forever thing. It is a calling. It is the chosen family.
And it's chosen family from the wrong people, the people that don't fit, from the people that are not supposed to be there. Outsiders belong anyway. Ruth was a Moabite. She was excluded from the assembly of the Lord. But the book says she belongs.
Oh, yeah.
The scripture itself overrules scripture. Pay attention to which direction it goes. It always goes towards inclusion. And the people that say that we don't belong, that there's no place for a transgender woman like me in their church, or a gay man, or a lesbian woman, or a bisexual person, or an asexual, or a non-binary person, or any of those of us that have been so ostracized in the rainbow community. We have gone and said, we are not going to take your label as being outsiders. We're going to claim our diversity not as a liability, but as a strength. We are colors on the rainbow, and we belong.
What do we mean when we talk about chosen families? We're talking about maybe mentorship or friendship, partner bonds. They can be part of chosen families. It shows here that loyalty to that family isn't based on blood. We always hear blood is thicker than water. No, not necessarily. It is based on love and commitment. And Ruth certainly showed that from the very beginning and never faltered from that.
Boy, this is such good news to those of us that were part of the church, especially if we were part of a conservative church and we no longer fit there. I was a pastor in that church.
Yes.
And when I came to terms with my own queer identity as a transgender woman, there was no more place for me there any longer. The place that I had looked forward to spending the rest of my life, the people I looked forward to serving, that was cut off to me permanently. And this story is such a story of hope for someone like me.
What I like about this whole story is that God's presence in Ruth's story is subtle, but it's visible throughout their relationship. Maybe God works most clearly through loyalty or care or chosen connection. But think of it this way. If God honors Ruth's choice, why would chosen family be seen as less valid today? Of course it wouldn't. God clearly not only accepts a chosen family, but often steers people to that chosen family. She was following God's desires, and God was nudging her to stay with Naomi to do this for the future that was planned out.
One of the things I love about this so much is how you see that loyalty is not just honored, but it is a deeply spiritual practice. Ruth and Naomi, they're different ages, they're different cultures, they're different religious backgrounds, and they stay anyway. Love that crosses that kind of difference, generational, cultural, theological, that is one of the holiest things in this entire book. And that means a lot.
Who has been a Ruth in your life? Or maybe who have you chosen and who has chosen you? I suggest we all find people who say, where you go, I will go, and mean it.
For those in the Jewish tradition, that feast, Shavuot, begins this coming Thursday, May 21st, and it ends at nightfall on Saturday, May 23rd. And for those in the Christian tradition, then Pentecost begins on May 24th, which will be Sunday. And that begins the second half of the liturgical year for those in the Catholic or Lutheran or other liturgical traditions that follow a calendar year. It's the second half of the year that talks about going forth and doing things. And it's a really important time in the church year. And then that following Monday is one of the most important things of all. It will be the time that you'll next get to hear this podcast. We will have a podcast next week about how to actually change someone's mind about LGBTQ plus issues.
Do you have a Ruth story? If you have a Ruth story, we'd like to hear it. Transcendent@gmail.com. Not long ago, we just passed 10,000 downloads. Surprisingly, it is really starting to move right now because of what you have done and how you have helped us out with this. Remember, this is our labor of love, reaching people and helping us all to survive, thrive, and love one another.
And with that,
We'll see you Monday. And Ruth actually made that choice with Naomi. Not
with Narumi. Narumi was your foreign exchange student that you had stay with you.